I looked at over 100 businesses to start. I started three other ones, all three failed. And I, when mobile home parks finally hit my desk in 2015, it had taken about 3 years to get to that point of just reading books, talking to people, trying to build a network, trying to build an educational baseline, trying to start companies. And when it hit my deck, it just it I it's just a no-brainer. It satisfied my why. What is it that I want to achieve with my life? And it married that with a huge need in the United States of America, which is affordable housing.
Are you looking to achieve massive success in your life without dealing with costly investment nightmares? If yes, then this is the podcast for you. Here, we provide engineers and busy professionals all the secrets and strategies to create multiple streams of income, build generational wealth, and live a meaningful life by design. Here's your host, Ted Patel.
Welcome, Decoding Cashflow listeners. Today we have an amazing guest, Ryan Narus. Ryan is a self-made real estate entrepreneur who owns and operates 82 mobile home park spanning 4,200 units. But here's the thing. He started with nothing, no money, no experience, and no network. And today we plan to talk about how he got started in mobile home parks, his views on investing in mobile home parks, what he does to improve trailer parks, his wins, pitfalls, and much more. Ryan, thanks for coming on the show. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here.
All right. So Ryan, before we get started and dive deep into your niche, can you please give a little bit background about yourself? How did you get started in real estate, especially this mobile home park business? And what's your main focus as of now?
Well, first off, Ted, I bought the lie. There's no sugarcoating it. I took it hook, line, and sinker. And the lie that I'm referring to is the study hard in school so you can go to a really good college, study really hard in college, get a good corporate job that'll funnel your way into success, and then you can retire on a beach somewhere. Well, that's a lie, because it turns out student loan debt is crippling, and it almost doesn't even matter now. I mean, even myself, I have over 30 employees, and I almost don't even care if you went to college, and I definitely don't care where you went to college. I just don't.
Yeah.
So imagine mortgaging your whole entire future, and a lot of employers don't even care.
Yeah.
And then in terms of a company, like, that may have been great advice decades ago, but companies don't really care like they used to. They're not loyal. The pension plans are non-existent. It's just a different investment and, call it, middle class mindset that is functional. You know, my folks and even my grandparents, they got away with working real hard and investing in the stock market and buying a home and just being beneficiaries of the rapid growth the United States of America had, and their single family home values alone could, in some cases, usher them into retirement. And that's just not the case anymore. And Ted, what I ended up doing, I doubled down on it because I'm not go ahead. I went to Wake Forest University, studied psychology and statistics undergrad, and I went back because apparently I couldn't get enough torture in terms of student loan debt to Wake Forest University. Not that Wake is any more or less expensive than the next college. And I got my MBA, and I focused on operations and marketing and business analytics statistics, and funneled into a couple great corporate jobs. I have lifelong friends in those places, and it was very grateful for that opportunity. But I just found myself going, this is not at all what anybody told me. And I decided I was going to buy my own business and grow a business. Thank Rich Dad Poor Dad for pointing me in the direction of real estate. And I just started looking. It took me years, and flash forward about 8.5 years since I found mobile home parks. I now have, as you mentioned, over 80 properties, over 4,000 units. And it came just on the back of me going, I don't know how to do this or how to grow this. I don't have any money. I don't have any network. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just going to go figure it out, because you know what? I did what people told me to do, and it didn't get me where I wanted to go. So why would I even want to listen to people at this point? I'm not. I'm going to go teach myself. That's what I did.
Exactly. And the underlying fact is it's the mindset, right? Your psychology. That plays a very key role as an investor. And in my opinion, like, it's a huge driver if an investor can be successful or a failure. So I'd like to know, like, what role did mindset play for you?
Oh, it's everything. And anybody who's a self-made person will tell you the same thing. And it is one of the easiest things to gloss over. Oh, yeah, whatever. I have the right mindset. Okay,
Yeah,
now what do I do? And it's like, no, the mindset is the foundation. You can't build a house while you're building the foundation. You can't
yeah,
do that.
yeah,
And alluding to the story I just told, I grew up with poor dad, and not because I had a poor, impoverished father. I didn't. I grew up middle class. Very grateful for that. But he was exactly what Rich Dad Poor Dad described: someone with a PhD who has plenty of income, whose biggest investment is their house. And it just wasn't, he bought some stocks, fine, but and he's going to live a very comfortable life, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with
yeah,
the life that my father lived. It was a lower risk life. It is a You may never become wealthy, but you'll live a pretty comfortable life, and there's nothing wrong with that. Where mindset fails is when you look at that mindset to be comfortable in a middle class lifestyle, and you think that's going to make you rich. That's where everything starts to fall apart, because the wealthy, they just fundamentally understand what it takes. And it's not that they have the how. And this is how you know you don't have the right mindset, is when you gloss over that. You're like, oh, mindset, whatever. Okay, how? The mindset is the answer to the how,
yeah,
because the right mindset will teach you what to look for and self-discover the how. Because just because one person did it one way doesn't mean you have a script or an instruction manual to follow. The
yeah,
mindset allows you to build your own how.
yeah,
So we could talk for hours about this, Ted,
yeah.
but it is so freaking crucial.
That's absolutely right. In addition to what you said, right, about how, I like to add, it's also about why, right? The person who has their why very clear, they will figure out the how.
Mhm.
Yep.
I couldn't agree more. That's
Yeah.
exactly why I got into affordable housing. It's because from a young age, my passion, my charity work was always around education of impoverished youth, because I had a learning disability growing up, but I had parents who had the money and the patience to make sure I got through my learning disability. I went to a very good school, Wake Forest University, twice, and I owe a lot of that to my parents. And I realized at a young age that how lucky I was, because if I was born into a family that didn't have the money, didn't have the patience, or neither, I probably would just wind up on the streets, or in jail, or definitely severely underaccomplished, and wouldn't be able to hit my full potential. And the reason why I bring all this up is because I realized that at a young age, and I realized that my heart, my passion was about paying it forward for people who are like me, who weren't born in the same situation. And what I learned about affordable housing is I could do that in scale with, we could talk about this later, my partial college scholarship, the credit builder that we've done to help the parents build their credit so they can afford, because poverty is expensive. Interest rates
Mhm.
go up when you don't have a
Yeah.
lot of credit or bad credit. And to help people rebuild their credit is huge, because it takes stress off their plate, which allows kids to get their education better, especially if there's not a drug dealer next door, right? So my why, to your point, helped me find the how, because my passion has from a young age been about improving education in our communities. And that helped me get through really, really hard days yesterday and really, really hard days today. So you're right. It's not just the mindset that helps you find the how, it's also the why, which is the staying power to help you through those tough days. Because no matter what lot you choose in life, it's going to be tough. So it's the mindset and it's the why. Ted, we're on the same page, man.
All right. All
Love
right.
it.
So, Ryan, let's get started. If you can give our listeners a little bit overview about your first deal, right?
Mhm.
How did you get started? Like, um, describe your first deal, the acquisition part, your, financing part or investor relationship part, and the full cycle.
The first mobile home park we did was 89 units. It was approximately 60 units occupied. So there's a good amount of vacant pads in the mobile
Okay.
home park. There's a $1.525 million acquisition, and we brought on experienced operators to do a joint venture. They tasked us, so we found the deal, so we got compensated for finding the deal. They were going to operate it, and we were just going to basically serve as limited partners. So we moved almost all of our compensation to the limited partnership side so we could observe. And so we could have our first deal basically done on training wheels. And they tasked us with trying to find a lender because this was their first time in this state, which was North Carolina. So they're out of state
Uh-huh.
folks.
Okay.
And Ian, my business partner, and I, we called 40 banks and got 40 no's.
Wow.
We were rejected 40 times because we had no experience, we had no network, and we had no money, and our investors were out of state.
Mhm. But
So
what about the operators? You said they were experienced. Didn't you leverage their names? Like,
we had to. That's how we got the loan done.
okay.
So it ended up being not exactly the most favorable loan, but it got done and the property was a huge success. But yeah, I mean, out of state recourse signing people, that's a big no-no. And we didn't know that at the time. So for our
Hmm.
second deal, by the way, we called 15 banks and got two yeses.
Okay.
And now banks call me, which is great. So
Of course.
it takes time.
Yeah. And you said the first loan was a recourse loan?
The majority of the loans that I do are full recourse. That's correct.
Uh-huh. So there's very less chances of the non-recourse loans for the mobile home park. Is that what you infer to, or?
Until you get to a more institutional grade or a more institutional size,
Uh-huh.
the amount of non-recourse debt options are very limited.
Okay. All right. So now, why mobile home parks? Like there are many other passive investments, right?
Mhm.
Uh, you can get into the multifamily, commercial, like storage space or flex packs. Uh, why specific multifamily? Did you choose it or it just landed as a first investment for you?
No, I chose it. So in 2012, I realized I was meant to be an entrepreneur. I'll thank Tim Ferriss' 4 Hour Work Week for that. I read that book and I went, what am I doing? I need to own my own business. And then I looked at over 100 businesses to start. I started three other ones, all three failed. And I, when mobile home parks finally hit my desk in 2015, it had taken about 3 years to get to that point of just reading books, talking to people, trying to build a network, trying to build an educational baseline, trying to start companies. And when it hit my deck, it just it I it's just a no-brainer. It satisfied my why. What is it that I want to achieve with my life? And it married that with a huge need in the United States of America, which is affordable housing, because
Yeah.
they're not really building any new affordable housing and things are getting less affordable by the second. And the demand for it is ever increasing. So from a macroeconomic standpoint, it just made all the sense in the world. And there wasn't a lot of people doing it. So if you read Jim Collins' Good to Great, is the intersection of something that you have a passion for, something you can be the best in the world at, because it's a small asset class, um, is something that's lucrative. And it certainly is all of those things. So it took me years to find, it took me other businesses to try to start. until it hit my plate. And even then, it took me over a year to buy my first deal and 2 years to even get full time. And full time meant quitting my banking job, losing my benefits in 401k, and moving into a mobile home to serve as my own property manager just so I could keep the lights on and food on the table, so to speak. Barely. I paid myself $35,000 a year and to chase my dreams. So I didn't even really get back to the middle class, if you will, for years. And now I'm at the point where I'm so far beyond that. It's amazing. Jim Carrey has a good quote where he says something along the lines of, if you're not willing to sacrifice your lifestyle for a couple of years, you care too much about what other people think about you.
Mhm.
And as somebody who went from a banking job with an MBA from a top university and a pile of student loan debt to getting paid next to nothing with no insurance and no 401k to chase a dream, um, I got to tell you, giving up a middle class lifestyle to live a working class lifestyle was an adjustment on the front end, but ultimately wasn't that big of a deal. And the reward for that sacrifice on the back end was unbelievable. And
Yeah.
most people aren't willing to do that, which comes back to your mindset point. Had the mindset, Ted.
Yep. And hard work always pays off at the end of the day.
Yep.
Yep. Uh, so when you start looking for the mobile home park, right,
Mhm.
for the new acquisition, what are the main criterias that you have in mind? Like what areas do you look into, as well as other criterias like population, rent growth, etc., etc. What are the things that you consider?
There's a bunch of different levers you can pull.
Uh-huh.
And when I got started, I needed to start in major metros
Mhm.
because I didn't have a lot of money and I needed to pick heavy value add opportunities where I could like literally
Yeah.
bring a bazooka to a boxing match, right? So in other words, I can bring an MBA level education to front lines property management because I myself was the live-in front lines property manager. And I was not only the property manager, I was the project manager, I was the construction guy, I was this, I was that, I did everything.
Okay.
And what that allowed me to do was first off get an incredible education because I was doing it all myself. I mean, I had to
Mhm.
do my own accounting for crying out loud because I couldn't even hire a bookkeeper. I didn't have any money, and all of a sudden now I'm a threat in the accounting department, which is great. I never would have expected that because I went and I made the sacrifice and I did what had to be done, and I learned a lot along the way. And what that allowed me to do by taking heavy value add opportunities that nobody else wanted to touch because it was too much of a hassle. It was too risky. It was too this. It was too that. I
Mhm.
could buy deals for pennies on the dollar. And within 18 months, I could go in and uh, basically breathe life back into affordable housing, which is an incredible service to a community because otherwise they're just going to either leave it abandoned effectively, everybody points their finger at it, goes, that's a drug haven, drug hole, or they bulldoze it and put luxury apartments. It doesn't really solve anything, right? For me to go in there and add slash preserve and enhance real zoned legal affordable units in a major metro, Atlanta, Charlotte, Raleigh,
Mhm.
Tampa, Orlando, I'm in the Southeast if you can't tell.
Yep.
What I was able to do is buy stuff nobody else would touch with a 10-foot pole within 18 months, get all of my money back and investors' money back and some, hit my promotes. So in other words, now I'm building a capital stack. Now I'm building wealth for myself personally and then do it all over again. So kind of like the Burr model in single family home flipping. You buy it, you fix it, you refinance it, you move on to the next one. That has changed now. Now that I'm much bigger, 30 plus employees, I don't necessarily have the time to go and buy a $500,000 deal and hope it's worth over a million in short order
Mhm.
when I can go buy something much more larger and stable and just operate it, make sure everything runs smoothly, bring a little bit of value but not like literally breathe life back into a
Yeah.
property. And the volume of dollars it is greater as a result. So in other words, the percentage is not necessarily, it doesn't jump off the page, but the volume of dollars is there. So what that means is now I don't have to be in downtown Charlotte, downtown Orlando, right? I can either be on the
Yeah.
periphery or not even in Charlotte at all. I can go to secondary and tertiary markets now. So one just important thing for anybody listening in, you don't have to be married to a strategy. You can pivot in time and you can take lessons learned and apply it elsewhere and find value anywhere. I mean, middle of nowhere, anywhere. So there's a bunch of different ways to do it. And I will say that the one thing that I'm married to right now is I'm pretty stuck in the Southeast. So that's probably about my only deal criteria right now.
Okay. And normally when you look for a new investment, uh, is it like, as you said, you do a lot of value add. So what are the things that you say, okay, this is the things that I can do a value add on to increase the price. So what are those type of items in mobile home park business?
Fantastic question. And look, this is a land lease business. That
Yeah.
means roads, trees, infrastructure, mailboxes, playgrounds. There's code enforcement issues, title issues, and then obviously the units themselves. So you're zoned for X amount of pads. If there are pads that are there with infrastructure, or getting infrastructure to them wouldn't be very difficult. In theory, you're legal and either legal conforming or legal non-conforming, but either way, you have units you can either bring online by bringing in new or used homes, or you can upgrade the quality of what you have. And when you have a community that the roofs aren't tin cans and you seal coat them or add a new metal roof or shingle roof, when you paint or add siding to the homes and add new decks that are safer, skirting, you properly manicure the community, add new mailboxes, add a little place where kids can stand under if it's raining, waiting for the bus. These are real value add items that you're bringing to the table. And the beautiful thing about starting with no money, like I did, is you can bring on an investor, bring in new units, do those things where you actually make the community look and feel nicer. You can get the riffraff out of there and bring in real good families you see every day and had no idea they live in a mobile home park. School teachers, hairdressers, restaurant workers. These folks often live in mobile home parks. You'd never know it. They're normal folks. Bring in, get out the Hollywood vision of what's in these, communities, and bring in the good, normal people who are going to be good residents and fight to have a community, and you can fight alongside them. And that not only brings real value from an IRR standpoint, but it does for a community within your community and the greater community. I cannot tell you how many times I've gone to one of my communities and firefighters or cops or code enforcement people are like, 5 years ago, I would never have wanted to set foot in this place alone without a gun. And now I can walk here in broad daylight and we see kids playing. That was never a thing before. That is what to me is a big part of my why. And it's a huge, if you're just in it for the money, which there are plenty of people are, and there's nothing wrong with that, as long as you're not slumlording it, you're bringing real value. You can still bring real value by doing the roads, doing the trees, upgrading the units. And obviously with that means more rent, because the community is nicer and therefore the demand is greater. And when demand is greater and the supply is limited, price goes up.
And talking about the land lease, right? In mobile home parks, how does that work? Is it like it's a 30-year lease for the pads, or how, if you can give us some more details on how this work?
Sure. So a mobile home is technically mobile. So in other words, you put the wheels on it and you have the little tongue and you pull it wherever. Obviously, you got to go through permitting and people have to be licensed, all that jazz. Typically, these homes don't move. What we've seen is approximately 80% of mobile homes move one time. And that's from the factory to the plot of land that they sit at until they get demoed. So it's very, I don't want to say rare, but it's definitely uncommon that homes get moved. And as a result, what Fannie and Freddie and most non-recourse options want to see are at least year-long leases. I have seen leases longer than that. I've seen stuff as short as week-long leases. Most leases are month to month. It also depends on the state. and sometimes the local jurisdiction. But me personally, I prefer shorter. And it's primarily because if you have a shorter lease and someone's doing something crazy, like shooting guns at people, or they have chicken coops and you have all sorts of problems
Yeah.
with rodents and stuff as a result, or everybody in the neighborhood's like, these people are selling drugs or they're dangerous or this and the other thing. I now have the ability to go and enforce rules in a better, quicker fashion, obviously with adhering to fair housing laws, right? I'm not going to be like, well, I don't like this person, so I'm going to non-renew them. No,
Yeah.
like if you don't follow my rules, I now have a quicker way to get you out to keep everybody safe. Because again, this isn't about anything other than keeping people safe, keeping it clean, keeping it affordable. And a more landlord friendly, shorter lease is better for that, generally speaking. At the same time, look, these people, not everybody's necessarily going to be as morally, ethically on it like I
Yeah.
am in these situations. And so a lot of times you get those longer leases, and that's good too. Again, look, as long as it's a good person that's following the rules, abiding by the law, not being a nuisance, like make it 100-year lease for all I care. It's not about that. It's about, are you being a good neighbor and are you abiding by the rules and the local laws?
And let's say if you have a vacant pad, how much does it
Mhm.
cost to get a new unit on it?
A lot. It's gone substantially up over the years. I mean, it's on average at plus or minus $5,000 to move a home now. And that's potentially low, especially if it's a double wide. It could be more than that. Then you have to add skirting, and you can't just bring the skirting from the last location because the topography is oftentimes different. So in other words, you can't just cut skirting. So in other words, it's not necessarily going to be a flat piece of land where you can just recycle old skirting. Same thing with the decks. You have to build stairs slash decks.
Yeah.
When you move a mobile home, it is not a gentle process. It's going to get jostled around. And as a result, when they twist and contort on the way to the mobile home park, stuff kind of pops out of place,
Mm.
even with brand new homes. So as a
Yeah.
result, you're going to have decking, skirting, power, water, sewer, and random rehab items within the home, you're running up a bill of, oh, and permitting. Don't forget that too.
Yeah.
And where are you going to live while your home is literally moving? You're talking 10, 15 grand plus, plus, plus to move a home. And that's why you don't see a lot of these move unless they're sold. So in effect, what we have is, yes, it's a land lease, kind of like an RV park, but it's not like in an RV where you turn it on and drive away.
Yeah.
It's a lot more complicated to move them. And as a result, these communities function a whole lot more like single family home communities.
And what does it cost for average size mobile home or mobile home park? Like, sorry, mobile home, I would say, not
Mobile
park.
home or mobile home
Yeah,
park? Mobile
mobile
home.
home.
So a mobile home is going to run you plus or minus $20,000. New, it's going to cost you 50 plus setup. So
Yeah.
you're, for a new one, you're talking really 60 to $80,000.
Mhm.
And that's just for a baseline entry level one. A used one plus or minus 20, depending on how used, what
Mhm.
condition, yada yada
Yeah.
yada, how far you're moving it, yada yada yada.
Okay. And what is the hardest part about this business that you've seen till now?
It is probably a tie between the people and code enforcement,
Mhm.
which is kind of one and the same. Look, whatever you're dealing with people, the overwhelming majority are wonderful. If
Yeah.
you're walking in the grocery store and you strike up a conversation with someone, usually they're going to be nice to you. When you get on an airplane, usually someone doesn't freak out and winds up on TikTok getting like tased, right? Like most people are normal, good people that
Yeah.
pay their bills. They want to chase their American dream. They're good people. That's comfortably 90% plus of my residents. It's the ones that are just more difficult that just makes the whole experience really, really tough. And the tough thing about the affordable housing space is that while most people are just normal and you couldn't pick them out of a line, there are some of those stereotypical Hollywood-esque individuals who are there out of necessity, right? In other words, if you're not an overly skilled worker, so if you're imagining a bell curve, they're on the not so favorable side of the bell curve, their income is going to be capped because of their skills. Some people are just incredibly unlucky. Totally normal people who've just gone through multiple divorces, or they've been disabled in an accident, or something did not go their way and they were just very unlucky. Then you have folks who are normal intelligence, normal work ethic, luck, normal, that are just really difficult people
Yeah.
that are just really mean, nasty, and just really tough to deal with. And as a result, they struggle getting housing because everywhere they go, they can't even order a cup of coffee without making someone angry at them. There are a higher percentage of people in affordable housing just by by the nature of it, right?
Yeah.
Because those folks in general are going to need a cheaper option because of X, Y, or Z factor for them is deficient relative to the norm, right? Because if they were normal, they would be living in, B class apartment complex or a single family home
Yeah.
or condo, right? But these are by and large folks who require affordable housing because they have something in their life that is below average. And that's okay. That doesn't make them any less human. They're deserving of a chance, and I love to give them that chance. And by the way, their kids have the ability to go get an education and lift themselves into a different situation. And I pride myself on giving folks that opportunity. Oh, and by the way, I'm only talking about the affordable aspect of this. There are plenty of mobile home parks that are middle class or upper class. If you look out along the California coastline, there are like mobile homes going for over $1 million.
Mhm.
So in other words, just when you hear mobile home, you don't have to think, 1, 2 star quality, like deep, heavy, affordable. There are plenty of normal middle class people, middle class, middle lower class people who are just straight middle class living, who want to live in a community. Because when you look at it, a B or C class apartment complex oftentimes is still a multiple of the rent, and you get no yard and you share a wall with a neighbor. Or you could own a home, you could rent it out, you could potentially sell it and make a profit. And if nothing else, you have cheaper rent and a yard,
Yeah.
especially if you're handy and you can fix stuff on your own. Like, why be in an apartment when you could own something, you could fix it on your own, you could save a whole bunch of money that way. And again, you have a yard
That's true.
and
That's
neighbors
true.
who care, not neighbors who change every so often because you're an apartment complex. So it's a lifestyle as well.
Yeah. And what is the biggest, or maybe what is the mistake that you have made as an in this mobile home park business till now? Any major mistakes that you'd like to
Oh
highlight?
man, we could talk for hours about mistakes that I've made and continue to make. You like no one's perfect, but I think the biggest, most painful mistake was out of the gate, and I talk about it on my podcast, Mobile Home Parks in Real Life. MHPIRL is my podcast. It's called Due Diligence Nightmare, where I was off to the tune of $100,000.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a pretty major water leak and people didn't have water, and that was a big
Okay.
deal. And thankfully, we fought through it. We raised the money, and the good news is we've repaved the roads, added culverts to that community. Now that it's been a dramatic success for a lot of reasons. It was our second mobile home park ever, and I'm so proud of that. And my employees, it's a family that live there. They still live there that day, and they're so happy there. The husband literally looked me in the face and said, "I will die here." It's like, this is awesome, to really be able to improve a community like that. But it did not start out that way. We did not pay investors for 18 months, and then we had to do a capital call. So money had to come
Wow.
right back. And I mean, it took, and I shared this with my live-in employees there. Like, we for years were taking losses at that property, but we believed in it and we fought through those tough times. That was the only one, by the way, where we've taken losses for years, because we believed in preserving the asset and making it better. And we were just wrong. I mean, I think I could distill it down to this. I did not know or appreciate how many gallons an average mobile home used per month, which the answer to that is between 2 and 5,000 gallons, plus or minus 4 is where the mean is, 4,000 gallons. And we basically just took the master meter readings over the course of a couple of months and divided out by the number of units, and it worked its way out to like 20,000. We're like, 20,000 gallons? I guess that sounds right. Nope. And the leak got worse with time. So we were paying the city gobs of money, plus people didn't have water pressure. It was a
So
nightmare.
how did you
Yeah.
find out the leak? Like, what
Oh, it took
did it
years.
pop out from the ground?
Oh,
Water pop-
it was multifactorial. So it
Oh,
was a complicated system that we basically had to delete and redo. It
uh-huh.
was a broken backflow meter, which we had no idea about. Does for whatever reason the city has backflow annual tests that they make us do, and for whatever reason we didn't know about that, and they didn't email us or tell us until like years later. And then we sent a guy out and he was like, dude, your backflow meters this is a swimming pool. Like,
Uh-huh.
come on, man. Right. And then we had, of all people, we were refinancing the property. We were doing a appraisal and a survey.
Mhm.
And I can't remember if it was the surveyor or the appraiser that was like, dude, there's a really big leak, right? So it was, I mean, it was cottage cheese lines basically, and a backflow meter, and then we had to install a pump because it wasn't getting the right pressure to the top of the hill. It was, it was an experience and education of plumbing, that was for sure.
All right. Wow. Well, that's quite an experience actually. As long as at the end of the day, you overcame the
Yeah.
situation and investor got their money back as expected. Nothing better than that.
Look,
Yeah.
again, it was a win for everybody, right? I
Yeah.
did not mind losing money for several years if that meant people got new roads, dangerous trees removed, dangerous people removed,
Yeah.
the ability to take a shower when you wanted to, reliable water. That's where the win was to me, was more that the residents got to know that their community was going to continue to exist in perpetuity. As long as I'm around and own it, I'm going to fight to keep it a mobile home park, and I'm going to fight to keep it affordable and safe. That to me is the biggest win.
Awesome. All right. And if any passive investors, they want to invest in the mobile home park ventures, right?
Mhm.
What are the things that they need to look out for?
Yeah, that's another like super long conversation, but I'll distill it down to this. If you're
Okay.
looking at a horse race, you have the horse and you have the jockey. And when you're breaking down the horse versus the jockey, they both need each other
Mhm.
to win the race. One is a little bit more important and out of control than the other, which is the horse, right? The horse is actually the one running the race. The jockey is the one guiding them and understands how to get the most out of the horse, right? But ultimately, the horse is for the most part uncontrollable. You're just trying to hope to kind of contain it and steer it in a direction. And that is much like real estate investing, especially mobile home parks, because the horse is like the market and your opportunity in the dirt itself. And the jockey is the operator that you pick. So in other words, if you're a limited partner, passive investor, you have to get two things right. Me as an owner operator, I have to get one thing right. And whenever I'm looking, because I've done limited partner deals in my space and in other space asset classes
Mhm.
too, with my own personal money. And the thing I always look for the first out of the gate is like, look, the market and the opportunity have to be strong,
Yeah.
because you can be a bad jockey with the best horse in the world and still do pretty darn well. If you're the best jockey in the world and you just have an awful horse, there's only so many things you can do.
Yeah.
So what I will say is, if you're looking at a deck, you've got to be thinking, do I like the market and the piece of dirt? Because don't forget, you can have a wonderful market and a terrible piece of dirt. That happens all the time. Or a wonderful piece of dirt and a terrible market, right? So it's both those things. And you have to make sure you have a really strong operator too. And a great example of that is if you see something that's like an outstanding return that hits your profile and oh my gosh, I can't believe I've never seen cash on cash and IRR like that before. That's amazing. Oh, and I get depreciation too. Oh my gosh, this sounds amazing. Oh, wait, it's in the absolute middle of nowhere and there's a ton of infill and they have to lease up a bunch of units. Wait a minute, it's in the middle of nowhere. People are leaving that city. How are they going to get people to move into this mobile home park? Well, it turns out that can go one of two ways. A lot of times there's supply capped small towns where there's actually a ton of demand, even though people are moving out. And the opposite is true, where everybody's leaving and you're not going to lease up anything. And your best course of action is to try desperately to keep people there, even if they're not paying very well. In other words, and that's just the tip of the surface. But if you're to distill it down, if you pick the right asset and the right market and your operator's trash, the good news is, worst case, you fire that operator and you get another operator, and you don't necessarily need to have the Michael Jordan of operators to do everything the business plan needs, because the market itself sells itself. So in other words, the market and the dirt, you have to get that right. The operator, while very important, like, you really need to be looking a little bit more at the horse than the jockey.
Absolutely right. So it's like the good operator, right? They can turn the things around. They can foresee the upcoming issues that they might encounter and take precautionary steps on the way along. And of course, Ryan, really enjoying this conversation. All right, but I like to be respectful for your time also. So maybe let's switch gears and transit to the final round of questions.
Sure.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
All right, sounds good. So what is the best business or investment advice you like to give to our listeners?
Beyond what I've already mentioned today, which was having the right mindset, finding your why, is you really, I got this advice. I got to credit Steve Reineman, former CEO of Pepsi. So he was the resident dean at Wake Forest University when I went to get my MBA. And I sat him down and I said, Steve, I just want to run my mobile home park idea by you. And I just want you to tell me what you think. And he said a lot of really intelligent things. He's a really smart guy. But the one thing that will probably stick with me forever in terms of investments, and this question specifically, is he said, in so many words, I would never invest in this. And it's not because it's not a great deal. It's because I understand. He was like, I'll just tell you what I invest in. I invest in things like convenience stores and other products that are stored in the convenience stores. And the reason why, as the CEO of Pepsi, we are bottling, manufacturing, and distributing to places like restaurants, convenience stores, sporting arenas, so on and so forth. So in other words, I really understand how that works.
Yeah.
And as a result, I can really understand if I'm making a good investment or not. And when I look at my own portfolio, I am not overly well diversified. I probably need to spend some time doing that, but I've taken that to heart, which is I really understand this. And as a result, I'm going to do a much better job backing the right horse and jockey, so to speak, because it's something I know. And I hate to say this, Ted, but I have a lot of friends, close and acquaintances, who over the years have listened to my podcast or seen me on LinkedIn and seen how well things have been going for me. And they basically have said, dude, call me when you have something. And like, I'm just going to blindly give you money. And I'm just like, oh, please don't do it. No, like, please don't do that. Like, I'm flattered. Yes, I will be a good steward of your money. But like, oh my gosh, don't blindly trust people, right? Especially if you're from outside of that asset class. So credit goes to Steve Reineman, former CEO of Pepsi, but invest in what you know and understand.
Yeah. And of course, the point that you mentioned, people who know you, they trust you. Sometimes they trust you, they'll blindly go in the deal. But it's better, even they blindly go in the deal, It's our job as an operator or as a syndicator to make them understand the deal, regardless, to bring them at the same level. See what are the risks, what are the pros, cons, and when they can expect their money back, how much is going to be the return, etc., etc. Right? Because you don't want them calling you every month or every quarter, what's going on, and asking simple questions over and over again.
It hurts to lose your own money.
Yeah.
It's and I think, knock on wood, I haven't had to experience this, but I know people who have. It hurts on another level to lose friends or family money.
Yeah, that's true. All right. And moving on to the next question, Ryan, what is the book that you will recommend? Maybe one, two, which has a which has a major impact on your life or on your business.
So I've mentioned a couple, so I've got another one teed up. I love reading, if you can't tell. I've mentioned Tim Ferriss' 4 Hour Work Week changed my life. Rich Dad, Poor Dad changed my life. Jim Collins' Good to Great, and was phenomenal. Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is a life-changing book. And of all of it's hard to pick a book that was like the definitive book, because there's several books that have changed my life in ways that were pivotal, and I can look back and be like, that was it was a must read. But 7 Habits was a book that was uniquely pivotal in both my personal life and my business life. So that's got to be my choice, Ted.
All right. Now, you mentioned about the books. Is there any other main source of information that that you regularly go through on daily or weekly basis that helps you learn and grow? Any other sources?
Look, there's a deluge of podcasts you can go through now. I hate to say it, but when I started my podcast, I was, I think, the 3rd or 4th mobile home park podcast. Now there's over a dozen. It's just inundated with opinions. And while they're great, some are phenomenal, some are fluff, most are somewhere in between the two. The truth of the matter is, when you are a master of one, not a jack of all trades, you'll find that sometimes the best information is stuff you quite literally get from the front lines, just doing what you do. And there's a big reason why, to this day, occasionally I will sleep in one of my mobile home parks, because I am adamant that I want to consume the product that I am, in effect, leasing out. I want to know, what does it sound like in the middle of the night? What does it feel like when it's cold? What is it like in a thunderstorm? Are the neighbors really that loud at 10 p.m. or is this an overreaction? Like, there's stuff I want to learn, and there's no better way of doing that than being on the front lines, talking to your employees, talking to your residents, driving through unexpectedly, doing the old trust but verify. Trust that processes are working, but check in on it. Make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. There are just so many lessons to be learned. Networking, sharing war stories with other operators, and most importantly, being with your employees, being with your residents or clients, and just learning every day. I don't care how long I'm in this business, Ted. I will always be willing to go and knock on a door and ask a resident how they feel, because I'm going to learn more from them than I'm ever going to learn anywhere else. And better yet, it's going to be very specific knowledge to the asset that I have, so I can make my own asset better with good, strong feedback.
Love it, man. Love it. So you're already, making life of the people living in mobile home park, much better by doing all the renovation add-ons, improving the quality of life for these people. Is there anything else that comes to your mind when you think about giving back to the world?
Yeah, look, I grew up wanting to leave the world better for having been here. When I go out to eat, for example, sometimes I'll even wipe down the table that I sat at. So it's like cleaner than it was when I showed up. And that's how I want this world to be. I don't, when I'm on my deathbed one day, I hope I've been a good father, a good husband, a good friend and family member. And there will be people there where, Stephen Covey, 7 Habits, like that bucket of my life is full. The other bucket that I hope is full is not a balance sheet or a bank account or PFS. It's going to be, can I, in my last moments, be proud of what I did and really know that the world was better because I was here. So I wasn't a drain on the world. I was an enhancer of the world. And to me, some of the things I mentioned earlier, my partial college scholarship, another thing I do is I pay for applications for colleges for folks, for kids and adults living in my communities. So a lot of times folks would love to go to college and would get qualified for all sorts of stuff, but they don't have $200 to apply to school, which is, I mean, that's a real thing people face. And it could be life-changing for them to go to college, and
That's true.
state will pay for it. But they can't even apply to help mom and dad or uncle or, abuela or abuelo build their credit because they had rough credit. And because they have rough credit, they can't get a car loan and their credit card percentage is high. And it's, like, to be able to at least give the opportunity to improve their lives, that to me is what my focus is on. And one thing I'll say, Ted, in terms of investing, if you are focused on helping others and making the world a better place, the money will come. It will.
Yep.
And to me, like, it's not about the money. Like, it just isn't. I don't care. Like, what did they say? The U-Haul doesn't follow the hearse. Like, I don't care. I want to know, and I want people to remember about me that I wanted to help others, and hopefully I achieved that. So I hope I'm inspiring others to do the
that's
same.
great. That's a great statement. And I love talking to you, Ryan. But before we conclude our podcast, always the best. How can Decoding Cashflow listeners get in touch with you?
I ain't hard to find, like Tupac used to say. I'm Ryan Narus. I'm the only one that I know of. It's super quick, easy Google. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I put out pretty much daily content, or at least business daily, if you will. And my podcast is Mobile Home Parks in Real Life. I am on Ted's podcast specifically so I can do hopefully 2 things: inspire you and allow you the ability to come and find me, because I will help you. I don't need any of your money. I don't care. My goal in life is to make people's lives better. And one big way I found to do that is to go on to podcasts and to have a podcast of my own and be available for people to come and reach out to me so I can help you, so then you can help others. And I can do that in scale if you listen to my content, if you consume my content, and most importantly, if you email me, if you reach out to me. So please come find me. Again, you don't owe me a penny. My name is Ryan Narus. Mobile Home Parks in Real Life is my podcast. Would love to hear from you. Would love to try and help you out.
Awesome, Ryan. It was a pleasure talking to you. Great deal of insights you provided to our listeners, and hope we can get you again on the show.
Thanks again, Ted.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Decoding Cashflow, brought to you by Aster Capital. If you found value in this episode, then please share it with someone who you think could benefit from it. And make sure to act on what you've learned. If you want Ted Patel to personally help you reach your goals, then feel free to set up a one-on-one call with him. Also, visit us at astercapital.com for more free resources. Content of this podcast is for informational purposes only. As always, please consult your own advisor before making any investment decisions or setting a course of action. Thanks again for joining us on this episode of Decoding Cashflow, and we'll catch you in the next episode.